Mr. Mark was the epitome of charm and sophistication. Tall and handsome, with a broad smile that could make anyone's heart flutter, he was the kind of man who turned heads wherever he went. His wealth was evident in every aspect of his appearance: tailored suits, polished shoes, and a watch that glittered under the light. But it wasn't just his appearance that made Mr. Mark irresistible. It was his smooth-talking nature and his uncanny ability to make women feel like they were the center of his universe. However, beneath this perfect exterior lay a man who was far from the Prince Charming he appeared to be. Unbeknownst to the women he pursued, Mr. Mark was married with 2 children. He led a double life, skillfully balancing the responsibilities of a family man with the thrill of seducing unsuspecting women. None of the women he targeted ever conducted a background check on Mr. Mark. They were too captivated by his display of wealth, his sophisticated lifestyle, and his sweet words. Mr. Mark would sleep with these women, making informal promises like, "I'll marry you," or "We're getting married soon." These words would cause the women to let down their guard and become vulnerable. He promised them marriage and luxurious things, and they fell for his charm. Ultimately, he lured them into his bed, took advantage of their vulnerability, and defrauded them of their money. Once he had taken what he wanted, he would drift away, leaving them not only heartbroken but also financially devastated. The first victim, Sarah. Sarah was the first in a long line of women who fell for Mr. Mark's deceitful charm. She was a hard-working nurse in her early 30s, with a heart of gold and a genuine desire to find love. Sarah met Mr. Mark at a charity event, where he approached her with a drink and a warm compliment about her smile. They hit it off immediately. Mr. Mark showered her with attention, sending her flowers at work, taking her out to expensive dinners, and listening intently whenever she talked about her dreams. Sarah felt like she had finally found someone who truly understood her, someone who made her feel special and cherished. As their relationship progressed, Mr. Mark began to talk about their future together. He whispered sweet promises, saying things like, "I can't wait to meet your family and pay your bride price." These words made Sarah's heart swell with hope and joy. He painted a picture of a beautiful life they would build together, a life complete with a big house, children, and even the possibility of moving abroad. Their meetings became more intimate, often taking place in luxury hotels where Mr. Mark would hold her close and whisper, "I can't wait for us to start our life together." Sarah was completely swept off her feet, convinced that she had found the man of her dreams. Then one day, Mr. Mark told Sarah he had an urgent business deal that required a substantial amount of money. He asked her if she could lend him some cash, promising to pay it back as soon as the deal went through. Sarah, blinded by love and trust, didn't hesitate to help. She withdrew her life savings and handed it to him without a second thought, believing that they were building a future together. But once he had the money, Mr. Mark began to pull away. He became distant, stopped answering her calls, cancelled their plans, and eventually disappeared from her life entirely. Sarah was left devastated, not only heartbroken but also financially ruined. She realized too late that the man she thought would be her husband had been nothing more than a fraud, using her love and trust to get what he wanted before disappearing without a trace. The second victim, Rebecca. Rebecca was a successful lawyer who had dedicated her life to her career. She was confident, independent, and always in control. So when she met Mr. Mark, she was instantly intrigued by his intelligence and sophistication. He was different from the men she usually dated. He seemed to understand her in ways no one else could, and his charm was irresistible. Mr. Mark played the long game with Rebecca. He took his time, carefully building her trust over several months. He never rushed into things, which made Rebecca feel even more comfortable and secure with him. They would spend hours discussing their ambitions, with Mr. Mark always expressing admiration for Rebecca's drive and determination. He made her feel like he truly valued her intellect and respected her as an equal. Rebecca, despite her legal expertise, found herself increasingly captivated by Mr. Mark's charm. He was everything she had envisioned in a partner: highly sophisticated, well-schooled, well-spoken, and seemingly a man of class. Mr. Mark knew exactly how to appeal to her sensibilities, understanding that as a lawyer and a smart, accomplished woman, Rebecca would be drawn to someone who appeared to match her intellect and ambition. Over time, Mr. Mark began to subtly weave the idea of marriage into their conversations. He hinted at their future together, talking about the life they could build and how perfect they would be as a couple. He told Rebecca that he could see them getting married, and that she was the kind of woman he had always dreamed of spending his life with. These promises, combined with his charm and sophistication, made Rebecca fall deeply for him. Knowing how to play on her emotions, Mr. Mark took his time to ensure that Rebecca was fully invested in the relationship. He didn't rush into intimacy. Instead, he carefully nurtured her trust and admiration until she felt completely comfortable with him. Eventually, this led to them becoming physically involved, with Rebecca believing that she had found the man who truly understood and valued her. One day, Mr. Mark introduced the idea of starting a business together. He told Rebecca that he had a brilliant idea for a company, but needed a partner who was as smart and driven as she was. He flattered her, saying she was the only person he could trust with such a venture. Eager to finally have a personal investment in something beyond her career, and flattered by his faith in her, Rebecca agreed without hesitation. Mr. Mark asked Rebecca to invest in the startup, promising huge returns once the business took off. Rebecca, caught up in the excitement and the potential of this new venture, blindly sent a large sum of money to Mr. Mark's personal account, without even insisting on a signed agreement or formal business contract. Another mistake she would come to deeply regret. But as time went on, Rebecca noticed that the business wasn't progressing as Mr. Mark had promised. Whenever she asked him about it, he would give vague answers or claim that things were moving behind the scenes. Her confidence in him began to waver, but she pushed those doubts aside, trusting that everything would eventually fall into place. Then one day, just like with Sarah, Mr. Mark disappeared. The money was gone, and Rebecca was left with nothing but a shattered trust and a harsh lesson. She was devastated, not just because she had lost her money, but because she had fallen for his deception, despite her legal expertise. She was ashamed to speak out, knowing that as a lawyer, she had failed to secure even a basic signed agreement or contract. In the end, Rebecca was left to grapple with the bitter truth that she had been duped. Her professional pride was deeply wounded, and the experience left her questioning her judgment. It was a painful reminder that even the most successful and intelligent individuals can fall victim to manipulation and deceit when emotions and trust are involved. The third victim, Lily. Lily was a young artist who had just moved to the city. She was full of dreams and aspirations, hoping to make a name for herself in the art world. Mr. Mark spotted her at an art gallery, admiring one of her paintings. He struck up a conversation, complimenting her work and expressing an interest in buying one of her pieces. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Mark became Lily's biggest supporter. He bought several of her paintings, helped her get a better studio, and even introduced her to influential people in the art scene. Lily was overwhelmed by his generosity and genuinely believed that Mr. Mark cared about her success. But Mr. Mark had other plans. He started telling Lily that he wanted to help her open her own gallery, a space where she could showcase her art and that of other emerging artists. Lily was ecstatic. It was her dream come true. Mr. Mark asked her to contribute some money towards the venture, saying it would be a joint investment. Without hesitation, Lily handed over her earnings from the sales he had helped her make. Once again, after the money changed hands, Mr. Mark's interest in Lily waned. He stopped visiting her studio. His calls became less frequent, and eventually, he vanished. The gallery never opened, and Lily was left heartbroken, her dreams shattered along with her trust in people. Fourth victim, Aisha. Aisha was a single mother working hard to provide for her 2 children. She met Mr. Mark at a business seminar, where he gave a talk about investments and financial freedom. Aisha was captivated by his knowledge and the way he carried himself with such confidence. After the seminar, Mr. Mark approached her, complimenting her on the insightful questions she had asked during the Q&A session. They exchanged numbers, and soon Mr. Mark was a regular part of Aisha's life. He would call her every evening, offering advice on how to manage her finances and grow her small business. Mr. Mark made Aisha feel like she could trust him completely. He talked about his own experiences, how he had built his wealth from nothing, and how he wanted to help others do the same. Aisha, who had always struggled with money, saw Mr. Mark as a savior. One day, Mr. Mark told Aisha about a lucrative investment opportunity that would secure her children's future. He assured her that the return on investment would be enough to pay for her children's education and more. Aisha, desperate to provide a better life for her kids, agreed to invest her savings. But just like with the others, once Mr. Mark had the money, he disappeared. Aisha's calls went unanswered, and when she tried to reach out to him, his phone was disconnected and his social media accounts were deleted. Aisha was left devastated, realizing that the man she had trusted had taken everything from her. Throughout all these encounters, Mr. Mark's best friend, James, had grown increasingly concerned. James knew about Mr. Mark's marriage and had even met his wife and children several times. He couldn't understand why Mr. Mark was leading this double life, deceiving and hurting so many innocent women. One evening, James decided to confront Mr. Mark. They met at a bar, and after a few drinks, James asked, "Mark, what are you doing? You've got a beautiful wife and kids at home. Why are you messing around with these women?" Mr. Mark shrugged it off, laughing as if it were all a joke. "Come on, James. It's just a bit of fun. Besides, these women are so gullible. They think they're in love, but they're just in love with my money." James shook his head, disgusted by his friend's attitude. "This isn't a game, Mark. You're ruining lives. What if one of these women finds out about your family? What are you going to do then?" Mr. Mark smirked, his prideful arrogance showing through. "They won't find out, James. I smooth-talked them into never posting my picture on social media or tagging me in any posts. I even make sure they don't use my picture as their DP or status. Besides, I'm smart. I give them a fake social media account, one I delete as soon as I'm done with them. They never get access to my real high-profile account. Trust me, I've got this all under control." James looked at him with a mix of disbelief and disappointment. "Mark, this isn't something you can control forever. You're playing with fire, and eventually you're going to get burned." But Mr. Mark just waved him off, too confident in his own cleverness to heed the warning. He believed he was untouchable, unaware that his actions would soon catch up with him. While Mr. Mark was busy deceiving women, his wife Anne was at home, taking care of their 2 children. Anne was a loving and devoted wife who had always supported Mr. Mark in everything he did. She had no idea about the double life he was living. Their children, a boy named Luke and a girl named Sophie, adored their father. But as time went on, they started to notice that he was rarely around. Mr. Mark would come home late, leave early in the morning, and sometimes not come home at all. When he was home, he was distant, often buried in his phone or his thoughts. Anne tried to talk to him about it, but Mr. Mark always brushed her off, saying he was busy with work. He assured her that everything was fine and that he was just trying to secure a better future for the family. But Anne couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She noticed that Mr. Mark wasn't as attentive as he used to be. He no longer took an interest in the children's activities, missed important events like school plays and parent-teacher meetings, and even forgot their birthdays one year. Anne felt increasingly alone in the marriage, carrying the weight of the family on her shoulders, while her husband drifted further away. Luke and Sophie missed their father. They would ask Anne why Daddy didn't come to their soccer games, or why he wasn't there to tuck them in at night. Anne would always give the same answer: Daddy's working hard so we can have a good life. But deep down, she knew that it wasn't just work keeping Mr. Mark away. The 5th victim, Sophia. Sophia was a beautiful and ambitious businesswoman, well regarded in her field for her sharp mind and stunning looks. However, despite her professional achievements, Sophia had always dreamt of finding a man who could sweep her off her feet. Someone who promised her the world, and a fairy tale romance complete with exotic honeymoons in places like the Maldives or Dubai. For some time, a man named Collins had been pursuing her. Collins was kind-hearted and hard-working, but he was not the wealthy, glamorous partner Sophia had envisioned for herself. He worked in a mid-level position at a company, and while he had potential, he didn't seem to match the luxurious lifestyle Sophia desired. Collins had proposed to Sophia several times, expressing his sincere desire to build a life together, but Sophia turned him down each time. "You're a nice guy, Collins, but you're just not my type," she would say. "I'm looking for someone who can offer me more, a life of luxury, travel, and excitement." Despite Collins's persistent efforts to win her over, Sophia dismissed him, thinking he was too ordinary and not classy enough for the life she dreamed of. She warned him not to contact her again unless she reached out first, confident that someone better would come along. Sophia's wishes seemed to come true when she met Mr. Mark at a business conference. From the moment she saw him, she was captivated by his aura. He was everything she had ever wanted: handsome, sophisticated, and with a well-spoken diction that made every word he said sound like poetry. Mr. Mark quickly noticed her interest, and he wasted no time drawing her in with his charm. Their conversations were filled with promises of luxurious vacations, starting with a honeymoon in Turkey and the Maldives. Mr. Mark spoke of his successful businesses, his love for travel, and how he was looking for a partner to share his world. Sophia felt as if she had finally found her dream man, someone who could give her the life she had always fantasized about. Sophia became deeply enamored with Mr. Mark. They began spending more time together, often meeting in luxurious hotels, where Mr. Mark would whisper sweet promises in her ear. "I can't wait to meet your family and pay your bride price," he would say while holding her close. These words made Sophia believe that her dreams were about to come true. She was so swept up in the fantasy of becoming Mrs. Mark that she barely noticed how quickly she was falling under his spell. Mr. Mark took his time with Sophia, knowing that she was smart and ambitious. He made her feel like she was the center of his world, and she soon found herself completely captivated by him. They made out several times in hotels, and he even visited her home, where they would spend long, intimate evenings together. Sophia was so consumed by her feelings for Mr. Mark that she already saw herself as Mrs. Mark in her mind. Meanwhile, Collins was still trying to convince Sophia to give him a chance. He continued to express his love and desire to be with her, but Sophia was too caught up in her fantasy with Mr. Mark. After meeting Mr. Mark, Sophia finally and vehemently rejected Collins. "Stay away from me, Collins," she told him bluntly. "I've met my dream man, and he's everything you're not." Mr. Mark had also been careful to control Sophia's actions. He told her never to post their pictures on social media, saying, "Let's keep things private until we're officially married." He even insisted that she shouldn't tag him in any posts or use his picture as her profile or status picture. Sophia, trusting him completely, agreed without hesitation. She believed that Mr. Mark was protecting their future together. Mr. Mark proposed to Sophia several times, always in moments of intimacy, further deepening her belief that they were destined to be together. With each whispered promise, Sophia became more vulnerable, allowing herself to be fully swept away by his charm. One day, after months of blissful dating, Mr. Mark suddenly became distant. The calls and messages that once filled Sophia's days began to dwindle. He cancelled their plans, claiming that urgent business matters required his attention. Sophia, initially patient, began to worry as days turned into weeks with little contact. Then, without warning, Mr. Mark disappeared. His phone was disconnected, his social media accounts were deleted, and Sophia was left with nothing but confusion and heartbreak. She tried desperately to reach him, clinging to the hope that it was all a misunderstanding. But deep down, she knew she had been deceived. The realization hit her hard. Mr. Mark was a fraud, just like the other women had warned. He had played with her emotions, taken her money under the guise of investing in their future, and left her with nothing but a broken heart. Sophia was devastated, and as the reality of her situation sank in, she fell into a deep depression. One day, while lying in bed, scrolling mindlessly through her phone, Sophia came across a post that made her heart stop. It was from Collins, the man she had once dismissed as not being good enough. The photo showed him standing in front of a large building in London, smiling broadly, with the caption, "Excited to start my new job here in the UK?" Sophia was shocked. Collins, the man she had rejected, was now living in the UK, successful and thriving. She couldn't believe her eyes. Memories of how she had treated him flooded her mind, and a wave of regret washed over her. Collins had always been kind to her, offering her stability and genuine love, but she had thrown it away for a fantasy that never existed. Driven by regret and desperation, Sophia immediately sent Collins a message, apologizing for how she had treated him and asking if they could start over. She even admitted that she had made a terrible mistake and was willing to be with him now. She waited anxiously for a reply, hoping that Collins would give her another chance. But when Collins finally responded, his message was polite but firm. "Sophia, I'm sorry, but I've moved on. I found someone who appreciates me for who I am, and we're very happy together. I wish you all the best, but it's time for both of us to move forward." Before Sophia could reply, she found herself blocked on all his social media. Collins was gone, just like Mr. Mark, but this time it was because of her own choices. She had lost the chance to be with a good man, because she had been chasing a dream built on lies. Sophia was crushed. The weight of her decisions bore down on her as she realized the extent of what she had lost. Mr. Mark had not only stolen her money and her dreams, but had also cost her a chance at real happiness. She spiraled deeper into depression, consumed by the knowledge that her pursuit of wealth and status had led her to ruin. Alone in her apartment, Sophia cried bitterly, cursing Mr. Mark for deceiving her and cursing herself for being so blinded by fantasy. She had turned away a man who truly cared for her because she couldn't see past her own desires. Now she was left with nothing but regret and the painful realization that she had let the best thing in her life slip away. As Sophia struggled to pick up the pieces of her life, she began to reflect on the choices she had made. She realized that she had been too focused on superficial qualities, wealth, appearance, and the promise of a luxurious life, without considering what really mattered in a relationship. The love, respect, and trust that Collins had offered her were far more valuable than any material possessions or grand promises. Sophia decided to seek help for her depression, reaching out to a therapist to help her work through her emotions and regrets. Through therapy, she began to heal, slowly understanding that her self-worth was not tied to the wealth or status of the man she was with. She started to rebuild her life, focusing on her career and personal growth, determined never to make the same mistakes again. Final victim Emily, the one who finally exposed and brought down Mr. Mark, ending his web of deceit for good. After deceiving countless women, Mr. Mark's next target was Emily, the wealthy daughter of a prominent businessman. Emily was everything Mr. Mark could have hoped for: beautiful, smart, and incredibly rich. But unlike his previous victims, Emily was also well-connected, and getting involved with her meant more than just a financial gain. It was an opportunity to elevate his social status even further. Mr. Mark met Emily at a charity gala hosted by her father. He immediately turned on the charm, complimenting her on her beauty and intelligence. Emily was flattered by his attention, especially since she had grown tired of men who were only interested in her for her money. Mr. Mark, with his good looks and smooth talk, seemed different. Over the following weeks, Mr. Mark courted Emily in grand style. He took her on luxurious vacations, introduced her to the most exclusive social circles, and even spoke about the possibility of a future together. Unlike the other women he had tricked, Mr. Mark didn't just promise Emily a better life. He promised her a life of luxury and power. Emily's friends and family were impressed by Mr. Mark. Her father, in particular, saw him as a strong and capable man, someone who could potentially be a good match for his daughter. Emily's friends, however, were a bit more cautious. They had heard rumors about Mr. Mark's past and tried to warn Emily, but she was too smitten to listen. "Emily, are you sure about him?" her best friend Clara asked one day over lunch. "There's something about him that doesn't sit right with me. Have you done a background check or anything?" Emily laughed off Clara's concerns. "Come on, Clara. He's been nothing but wonderful to me. I've never been happier. Besides, my dad's already looked into him. Everything checks out." Clara wasn't convinced but decided to drop the subject. She could see how happy Emily was and didn't want to rain on her parade. Still, she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something wasn't right. Mr. Mark had a plan. This time he wasn't going to disappear like he did with the other women. He was going to marry Emily, use her connections to expand his business empire, and then, once he had secured everything he needed, he would divorce his wife Anne and abandon his children. He had already started the process of moving some of his assets offshore, making sure that when the time came, he could make a clean break without losing anything. He imagined a new life with Emily, one where he would be part of the elite, rubbing shoulders with the most powerful people in the country. He would keep his secrets hidden, play the role of the devoted husband, and live the life he always believed he deserved. But as the wedding date approached, Mr. Mark made a critical mistake. He underestimated Emily's intelligence and the loyalty of her friends. Few weeks before the wedding, Emily, excited about her upcoming marriage, decided to share her happiness with the world. She posted a picture of herself with Mr. Mark on social media, announcing their engagement to her followers. The post went viral almost immediately, attracting thousands of likes and comments. But amidst the well-wishes, one comment stood out. It was from a woman named Sarah, who had been one of Mr. Mark's previous victims. "Be careful, Emily. This man is not who you think he is. He's married with children. He deceived me and several other women." Emily's heart stopped when she read the comment. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her first instinct was to delete the comment, but curiosity got the better of her. She decided to message Sarah privately, asking for more details. Sarah responded quickly, sharing her story of how Mr. Mark had tricked her out of her money and disappeared without a trace. She even provided pictures and messages as evidence. Emily was shocked. The man she was about to marry wasn't the person she thought he was. He was a liar, a cheat, and worst of all, he was already married. Emily didn't know what to do. Her world was crashing down around her. How could she have been so blind? How could she have ignored the warnings from her friends? She felt humiliated and betrayed. But Emily wasn't the type to sit back and let things happen to her. She decided to confront Mr. Mark and get to the bottom of this before it was too late. That evening, Emily invited Mr. Mark over to her family's mansion for dinner. She acted normal, pretending that everything was fine. Mr. Mark, completely unaware of what was about to happen, arrived with a bouquet of roses and a bottle of expensive wine. They sat down to dinner and Emily made small talk, keeping the conversation light. But as they finished their meal, Emily's demeanor changed. She looked Mr. Mark in the eye, her voice cold and controlled. "Mark, is there something you want to tell me?" Mr. Mark was taken aback by the sudden change in her tone. He forced a smile. "No, darling, everything's perfect. What's this about?" Emily didn't flinch. "I know about your wife and children. I know everything, Mark." The color drained from Mr. Mark's face. He tried to deny it at first, stumbling over his words, but Emily cut him off. "Don't bother lying to me. I've spoken to Sarah and the others. I have all the evidence I need." Mr. Mark was trapped. He knew there was no way out this time. But instead of apologizing, he tried to shift the blame. "Emily, please, you have to understand. My marriage was a mistake. I don't love her. I love you. I was going to leave her for you, but I needed time." Emily stood up, her hands trembling with anger. "How dare you? You've been playing with people's lives, with their emotions, just for your own gain. You disgust me." Mr. Mark tried to reach for her, but Emily stepped back. "Don't touch me. We're done. I'm cancelling the wedding, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth about you." True to her word, Emily cancelled the wedding and exposed Mr. Mark's lies to the world. She posted a detailed account of his deceit on social media, including the stories of the women he had scammed. The post spread like wildfire, and within hours, Mr. Mark's reputation was in ruins. His business partners severed ties with him, and his companies began to crumble. His wife, Anne, who had been oblivious to his double life, found out through the media. Devastated, she filed for divorce and sought full custody of their children. Mr. Mark was left with nothing: no wife, no family, no money, and no friends. As for Emily, she was heartbroken but relieved that she had discovered the truth before it was too late. She knew she had dodged a bullet and was grateful for the support of her friends and family. It took time, but she eventually moved on, knowing that she deserved better than the life Mr. Mark had offered. Mr. Mark's downfall was swift and brutal. He went from being a wealthy, respected businessman to a pariah overnight. With his assets frozen and his companies in disarray, he had no choice but to sell his mansion and move into a small, shabby apartment. He tried to reach out to his former friends and business associates, but no one wanted anything to do with him. His phone calls went unanswered, and his emails were ignored. The women he had wronged banded together, filing lawsuits against him for fraud and emotional distress. The legal battles drained what little money he had left, leaving him bankrupt. Mr. Mark's health began to deteriorate. The stress of losing everything took its toll on him, and he developed severe anxiety and depression. He spent his days alone, tormented by the memories of the life he had destroyed with his own greed and arrogance. Meanwhile, Anne and the children tried to rebuild their lives. Anne was determined to give her kids a stable and loving home, even without their father. She found a job and slowly began to regain her independence. Luke and Sophie missed their father, but they were also old enough to understand that he had hurt their family. With time, they came to accept that they were better off without him. Several months after the scandal, Emily received a message from Clara. "Hey, are you free for coffee? There's someone I want you to meet." Emily hesitated at first, still wary of getting involved with anyone new. But Clara insisted, so Emily agreed to meet her at their favorite cafe. When Emily arrived, she was introduced to a man named Daniel. He was kind, down to earth, and genuinely interested in getting to know Emily for who she was, not for her family's wealth or connections. They chatted for hours that day, sharing stories and laughing like old friends. Unlike Mr. Mark, Daniel wasn't flashy or overly charming. He was honest, sincere, and had a quiet confidence that made Emily feel comfortable and safe. Over the following weeks, Daniel and Emily spent more time together. He wasn't just a listener. He was someone who genuinely cared about her thoughts and feelings. He wasn't trying to impress her with money or status. He was simply being himself. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt like she could trust someone again. Daniel didn't rush things. He was patient, understanding that Emily had been through a lot and needed time to heal. He didn't pressure her into a relationship or make grand promises. Instead, he showed his love through small, thoughtful gestures, like remembering her favorite coffee order or surprising her with a book she had mentioned wanting to read. Emily found herself slowly letting go of the pain and betrayal she had suffered. Daniel's kindness and sincerity were exactly what she needed to move on from the ordeal with Mr. Mark. She realized that real love wasn't about grand gestures or sweeping romance. It was about honesty, trust, and mutual respect. While Emily was building a new life with Daniel, Mr. Mark was facing the consequences of his actions. The lawsuits against him had resulted in a series of court battles, each one draining him further emotionally and financially. The women he had deceived came forward with their stories, and their testimonies painted a clear picture of his manipulative and deceitful nature. The media had a field day with the scandal, and Mr. Mark's name became synonymous with betrayal and fraud. His former business associates distanced themselves from him, and he was blacklisted from the industry. With no way to rebuild his life, Mr. Mark was left alone, reflecting on the choices that had led him to this point. His health continued to decline, exacerbated by the stress and isolation. The once powerful and confident man was now a shadow of his former self, broken by the weight of his own misdeeds. Anne, on the other hand, had moved on from the pain Mr. Mark had caused. She focused on raising her children and building a stable, happy home for them. She had found a new sense of independence and strength, no longer defined by her past relationship. The love and support of her friends and family helped her through the difficult times, and she emerged from the ordeal stronger than ever. Mr. Mark's story became a cautionary tale, a reminder to everyone that trust is something that should never be taken lightly. His life was a testament to the fact that lies and deceit would eventually catch up with you, no matter how careful you think you are. People in the community talked about him, not with admiration as they once did, but with pity and disdain. He was a man who had it all and lost everything because of his greed and arrogance. His story served as a warning to others, reminding them that the pursuit of power and wealth at the expense of others could only lead to ruin. He spent the rest of his days in solitude, reflecting on his life and the choices he had made. He had lost everything that was once important to him: his family, his wealth, and his reputation. In the end, all he had left were the memories of the life he had destroyed with his own hands. Take-home lesson. This story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of discerning true character in relationships. Women should be cautious not to be swept away by a man's wealth, appearance, or sweet words. While it's natural to be attracted to these qualities, they should not be the foundation of a relationship. True love and partnership are built on honesty, respect, and trust. Qualities that go far beyond material wealth or outward charm. Additionally, women should never feel pressured to settle for less than they deserve, simply because of societal expectations or concerns about age. Whether you are in your 30s, 40s, or beyond, remember that it is far better to wait for a genuine, loving relationship than to rush into one that might lead to heartache and regret. Marriage should be a union based on mutual respect and understanding, not a race against time or a response to external pressures. Finally, remember that all that glitters is not gold. It's crucial for both men and women to conduct proper background checks in a relationship to truly understand the person they are with. This can help prevent deception and avoid the pain of stories that touch the heart in the worst ways. Hope you enjoyed this intriguing episode. If you did, please do me a small favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and don't forget to share it with your friends. Trust me, they won't want to miss out on this one. And hey, if you want more stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe. Let's keep the fun going. Your likes and comments are the secret ingredients that keep the stories coming. Also, kindly tell us which country you're watching from so we can give you a shout out in our next video. Thanks for being awesome. God bless you.